The archive does not speak of terror, it speaks of logistics. It is a registry of mass and movement and material. The first document, brittle at the edges, is not a declaration of war. It is a requisition order. Dated to the year 1383 Samarkand, it lists in a precise sloping hand 200,000 feet of rope, 5,000 wagons, 10,000 shovels and picks. The destination is noted simply, the Khwarezmian project. The purpose field is blank. This is the first footprint. The institution is the Diwan-i-Arz, the military registry of the Timurid state. Its power is not in soldiers but in ledgers. Its weapon is not the sword but the census. To understand the 5 destructions, one must first understand this machine. It operated on a principle of cold utility. A city was not a living entity of families, markets, and prayers. It was a node of resistance, a reservoir of resources, a mathematical problem requiring a logistical solution. Tamerlane, or Timur the Lame, was not merely a conqueror. He was the chief auditor of this institution. His campaigns were audits. Failure to comply resulted in liquidation, not of assets but of the asset holders, entirely. The victim group is defined by geography and choice. It is not a race nor a singular faith. It is any urban population that constituted a problem of precedent. The cities, Isfizar, Delhi, Baghdad, Isfahan, Damascus, were not random. Each represented a specific category of defiance. Isfizar in 1383 was the first full application of the template. Its crime was a rebellion after formal submission. This was, in the ledger of the Diwan-i-Arz, the most toxic entry. It represented a virus of bad precedent. If one city could rebel and see another dawn, the entire arithmetic of control would collapse. The method for Isfizar was architectural. The order, relayed via firman on thin, pressed paper, was explicit. The bricks of their dwellings shall find new purpose. Survivor accounts, filtered through chroniclers a generation removed, describe a process of systematic deconstruction. Citizens were not slaughtered in a frenzied charge. They were divided into work crews. Men, women, adolescents. The cold, dry air of the Afghan plateau would have been filled not with screams, but with the sounds of industry. The crack of mortar, the groan of wood, the scrape of brick against brick. Their own homes were dismantled, brick by brick, beam by beam. The authority was perpetually visible, but never engaged in the act itself. Timur's command tent, a vast pavilion of scarlet and gold, was erected on an overlooking promontory. He would be seen reviewing reports, holding audience with engineers. He was a site manager. Below him, the institution's agents, the Darughas and Tovachas, moved through the grid of the dying city with wax tablets and styluses, checking inventories, tallying the growing piles of materials. The psychological pressure was not of imminent blade, but of inescapable participation. You were not a victim of a massacre. You were a laborer in the demolition of your own world. Each brick you carried away was a testament to your powerlessness, catalogued by a clerk. The purpose of the bricks became the central, horrifying fact. They were not taken for reuse in Samarkand. They were not discarded. The Diwan's records show the dispatch of master masons from Herat. Their task was not construction in the traditional sense. As the city was leveled to its foundations, a new structure began to rise on its outskirts. A tower. The bricks, still bearing the soot of former hearths, the faded paint of family rooms, were mortared together. The work took weeks. The form became clear, a vast conical pyramid. The final phase involved the work crews once more. They were ordered to gather stone, not large stones, small, round, fist-sized stones. They were brought to the base of the tower. Then came the final, logistical adjustment. The crews were processed. The institution was efficient. There were no wasteful, chaotic executions. It was a line, a tally, a method. The chronicler Sharaf ad-Din Ali Yazdi, writing under Timurid patronage decades later, allows a single, stark sentence to enter the record. And they were incorporated into the fabric of the structure. The tower at Isfizar was not a monument to victory. It was a filing system, a permanent geological record of the audit. Each brick, each stone, represented a unit of defiance that had been neutralized and recategorized. The institution named it a minaret, but it served no call to prayer. It was a data storage device, silent and absolute. The message was not, "I can kill you." The message was far colder. "I can unmake your civilization and use its physical matter to build a cairn marking its absence. I will make you build the cairn. My scribes will record the exact number of bricks used." The air grows cold. The wind whistles through the empty plain where Isfizar once stood. The ledger for the project is closed. The requisition tools are accounted for and stored. The institution turns its gaze eastward, its templates perfected, its methods validated. The problem of precedent has been solved. New problems in new cities await their audit. The first entry in the Ledger of Horrors is complete. The machinery, oiled and silent, begins to move toward its next destination. Its appetite for calculation is just beginning. The institution learns, it optimizes. The destruction of Isfizar was a prototype, a successful proof of concept for the systematic erasure of urban space. The ledger entries for the next target, Delhi, 1398, reveal a shift in methodology. The requisitions are more specialized. The Diwan-i-Arz no longer orders generic shovels. It commissions specific tools from the arsenal workshops of Samarkand. Thick, curved blades for clearing sugarcane fields on an industrial scale, reinforced carts with iron axles, and vast quantities of quicklime. The objective is no longer just architectural unmaking. It is environmental recalibration. The city is not merely a node to be removed, but a landscape to be permanently scarred and rendered sterile. The victim group in Delhi is defined by a different calculus, the crime of wealth and perceived spiritual challenge. The Sultanate of Delhi was fabulously rich, a beacon of Islamic power that rivaled Timur's own claim to legitimacy. Its defiance was passive, inherent in its existence. The institution's approach here is one of systematic extraction followed by calibrated terror. Timur's army does not immediately assault the city. It surrounds it, and the Darughas establish counting stations. For days, a forced exchange occurs. The wealth of Delhi, gold, jewels, silks, manuscripts flows out of the gates in an orderly, inventoried stream. In return, the institution grants a temporary, fragile promise of safety. It is a transaction. The city is purchasing its survival, coin by coin. The psychological pressure is that of the market, twisted into a nightmare. Every treasure handed over is a measure of hope spent. But the institution views wealth as a fluid asset and populations as a volatile liability. Once the transfer is complete, the liability remains. The method shifts. The army is ordered into the vast sugarcane fields surrounding Delhi. The specialized blades are distributed. The order is to flatten the fields, to create killing zones and clear lines of sight. This is not tactical, it is theatrical. It is the creation of a stage. Then the soldiers are instructed to round up the elephants of the defeated sultanate, over 100 of them, magnificent war beasts. The elephants are not killed, they are weaponized. The chronicles describe the event with a chilling, procedural tone. The elephants are starved for days, driven into a frenzy. Then their handlers, now prisoners themselves, are forced to mount them. Bundles of oily straw are tied to their tusks and set alight. The maddened, burning elephants are then driven back toward the city gates and the prisoner-of-war camps established in the cleared fields. The institution does not record the chaos. It records the outcome. The disturbance facilitated the necessary pacification of the remaining asset pool. The fire and the trampling are not the goal. They are the tool to create a state of absolute dissociative panic, making the next phase administratively simpler. The aftermath is where the institution's true coldness manifests. There is no mass burial. The logistical problem of 100,000 corpses, a figure noted in a later margin of the ledger, is solved with efficiency. The requisitioned quicklime is used. Pits are dug by surviving prisoners. Layers of bodies, layers of quicklime. The earth is packed down. The fields are plowed over. The institution solves the sanitation problem, eliminates a potential source of disease, and erases the evidence in one operation. Within a season, the great killing fields would sprout new cane, growing unnaturally lush from the soil below. The eradication is made botanical. The silence is cultivated. The escalation continues with Isfahan, 1387. Here, the crime is a broken treaty, a revolt after a governor's installation. The institution's response is to introduce a system of quantifiable, collective punishment. The method is numerical and horrifyingly fair in its grotesque logic. After the city's capture, a census is taken. A quota is set, a certain number of heads per district proportional to its estimated population of rebels. The institution's agents do not wield the swords. They oversee the count. They are quality control auditors for an atrocity. Prisoners are ordered to execute their own neighbors to meet the district's quota, under the watch of Timurid officers with tally sheets. The result is not a mountain of corpses, but a series of neat, stacked piles at each of the city's gates. The piles are then given architectural form, towers, or kells of skulls. The chronicler Ahmed ibn Arabshah, a bitter critic, writes that 28 such towers were counted, each containing approximately 1,500 skulls. The institution does not dispute the numbers. It would see them as a testament to thoroughness. Each tower is a receipt, a public ledger entry confirming the quota was met. The systems of secrecy are absent here. This is documentation as public broadcast. The towers are left to bleach in the sun, a precise mathematical monument to the cost of defiance. The smell of decay is not a byproduct. It is part of the message, a sensory component of the data. The psychological pressure achieves a new dimension. It is no longer just fear of death, but fear of becoming a unit in a grim accounting exercise, of having your cranium become a brick in a tower that stands as a civic monument. The institution has moved from destroying buildings to cataloging people in the most permanent, anatomical way possible. The silence it imposes is not of the grave, but of the exhibit. The wind whistling through 42,000 empty eye sockets produces a sound unlike any other, a low, collective moan woven from nothing but air and bone. It is the sound of the ledger speaking. The machinery, now operating with metronomic precision, turns its gaze next to Baghdad, 1401. The template is set. The requisitions are made. The institution prepares to audit another ancient city, its methods refined, its appetite for cold, administrative horror undiminished. The echo of the towers of Isfahan seems to hang in the air, a silent summons to the next inevitable, calculated erasure. Baghdad 1401 presented the institution with a unique challenge, the erasure of a symbol. It was not merely a city of rebels or wealth, it was the ghost of the Abbasid Caliphate, a city of libraries and memory. Its crime was historical, its very existence was a counter-narrative to Timur's proclaimed world order. The Diwan-i-Arz's ledgers show a fascinating shift. Alongside the now standard orders for labor crews and quicklime, there is a new line item, scribes and cartographers. Their task is not to destroy knowledge, but to inventory it prior to its destruction. The method here is archival annihilation. Every manuscript, every map, every deed from the House of Wisdom is to be catalogued by title and author before being fed to the flames. The act of burning is not one of blind rage, but of calculated oblivion. You must first know what you are erasing to truly measure the completeness of the act. The psychological pressure is aimed at the future, at severing the roots of a civilization's identity. The fires that burn for weeks in the great libraries are the inverse of a lighthouse, a beacon announcing the consumption of light itself. The aftermath in Baghdad is marked by a specific, chilling architectural statement. The chronicles note that Timur ordered the construction of 120 towers of skulls, a number so precise it feels institutional. But the key detail is their placement. They were not built on the outskirts. They were erected at precise intervals along the city's crumbling walls and at every major crossroads within the city. The message was not just of conquest, but of occupation by the dead. The city's own infrastructure became a display case for the institution's work. The living population, what remained, was forced to navigate a necropolis of their own former neighbors. The silence imposed was not empty. It was populated by these silent, staring sentinels. The legacy was one of perpetual, ghastly navigation. With Damascus, 1401, the institution faced a different test. A city that surrendered without a major siege. Its crime was political. It had housed and honored a rival ruler. The punishment, therefore, could not be justified by the standard templates of rebellion. The institution's response was a masterpiece of cold, legalistic terror. The city was not to be destroyed. It was to be disassembled with judicial precision. A decree was issued. The artisans of Damascus, its metal workers, its glassblowers, its weavers, its ceramists were to be spared. They were instead registered, their tools inventoried and forcibly relocated to Samarkand. Their families could accompany them. This was not an act of mercy, but of asset stripping. The city's soul, its creative and productive capacity, was surgically removed and transplanted to adorn the conqueror's capital. Then the demolition crews moved in, not to level everything, but to selectively dismantle. The great Umayyad Mosque was a primary target. Its legendary mosaics, its minarets, were not smashed. They were carefully taken apart. The marble, the tiles, the carved wood, all were catalogued, crated, and loaded onto the same wagons carrying the artisans. What remained of the city was not a ruin, but a hollowed-out shell. The finest homes, the souks, the public baths were stripped bare. The institution left behind the infrastructure of poverty and the memory of loss. The legacy here was a phantom limb sensation, a city that physically stood but whose essence had been cleanly extracted, its beauty now 1,000 miles away, repurposed as propaganda for the power that had erased it. The silence in Damascus was the silence of the workshop, the loom, and the furnace gone cold. The final act of erasure was always self-directed. After each city, the Diwan-i-Arz would initiate a process of internal documentation and narrative control. Court historians like Nizam al-Din Shami and Sharaf ad-Din Ali Yazdi were tasked with composing the official chronicles, the Zafarnama. Their works are masterpieces of the institution's voice. The horrors are not denied, but they are framed as necessary, logical outcomes of defiance against a divinely ordained order. The towers of skulls become monuments to justice. The forced relocations become the gathering of knowledge and craft under the banner of progress. The systematic burning becomes the purification of erroneous texts. The institution thus wraps its violence in the respectable cloak of historiography, ensuring its legacy is one of terrifying order, not chaotic brutality. The silence it imposes echoes in the pages of these very books. The ultimate legacy of these 5 horrifying acts is not found in ruins, but in a pervasive, psychological architecture of fear that outlasted the empire itself. The institution proved that a city could be destroyed not just with fire and sword, but with ledgers, quotas, and forced labor. Not just through massacre, but through transplantation and archival theft. Not just in a frenzy of violence, but with the calm, meticulous pace of a state-sponsored project. Centuries later, when archaeologists or historians stumble upon a foundation stone in a field near Isfizar, or note the unusual fertility of a certain tract outside Delhi, or ponder the sudden decline of a Damascene craft tradition, they are touching the aftermath. But they are not finding closure. They are finding an echo of a system that viewed human civilization as data to be processed, a problem to be solved, and a resource to be reallocated or deleted. The haunting is not of ghosts, but of a flawless, airless logic. The institutions of power that followed across continents and eras would study these templates. The true horror is not that it happened, but that it worked, and that the blueprints for such systematic unmaking were ever drawn up in so bold, so cold, and so permanent a hand. The wind still blows through the empty spaces. The ledgers somewhere are closed. The audit is complete. But the calculation, once made, hangs in the historical air forever. A cold, silent proof of what an institution, unleashed and unmoored from humanity, is capable of building from the bricks of annihilation.